The morning alarm never came. Marcus Wells woke up in his underground bunker to the sound of plasma fire hitting the surface above. The walls shook, dust fell from the ceiling, and somewhere in the distance, a child was crying. He had been the colony administrator of Haven's Rest for 8 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. 3 months. 3 months since the Talvari ships had appeared in their sky like angry metal birds. 3 months since his world had become a living hell. Marcus pulled on his boots and walked through the narrow tunnels that connected the underground shelters. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the metal walls. People sat in small groups, talking in whispers. Some played cards with worn-out decks, others just stared at nothing. "Morning, boss," said Tom Blake as Marcus passed by. Tom was the security chief, a big man with tired eyes. He held a rifle that looked old and beaten. "Sleep well?" Marcus almost laughed. Sleep? What was sleep? "How many did we lose last night?" 2. "More shelters got hit. Direct strikes." Tom's voice was flat. 15 people, including the Johnson family. Marcus felt something cold in his stomach. The Johnsons had 3 kids. The youngest was only 5 years old. He had given her candy just last week. "Any word from the surface teams?" "Orbital Platform 3 is gone. Platform 2 is running on backup power. They might last another day, maybe 2. Tom spat on the ground. "Those alien bastards are playing with us. They could finish this anytime they want." Marcus knew Tom was right. The Talvari weren't trying to win quickly. They were enjoying this, like cats playing with mice before the kill. He walked deeper into the tunnels, past families huddled together on thin blankets, past old men who had fought in other wars, now too weak to hold guns, past mothers who sang quiet songs to keep their babies calm while death reigned from above. In Shelter 7, he found Lisa Park working at a computer that looked like it might fall apart. Lisa was the defense coordinator, the smartest person on Haven's Rest. If anyone could figure out how to survive this, it was her. "Any luck with the long-range communications?" Marcus asked. Lisa looked up. Her face was thin and pale. Like everyone else, she hadn't been eating enough. "Still nothing. The Talvari are jamming everything within 50 light years. Even if someone wanted to help us, they wouldn't know we're here." Marcus sat down on a metal box that served as a chair. "What about the distress beacon?" "It's still broadcasting. Bob has it running on automatic, sending out our call for help every 6 hours." Lisa's fingers moved over the keyboard. "But Marcus, we both know the truth. Haven's Rest is too far out. Too forgotten. Most people in Earth space think this colony was abandoned years ago." She was right, and they both knew it. Haven's Rest was on the edge of human space, far from the main trade routes. It was a mining colony, nothing more. They dug rare metals from the ground and sent them back to the core worlds. Nobody cared about miners and their families. "How long can we hold out?" Marcus asked. "Food will last maybe 2 more weeks if we cut rations again. Water is okay for now." "But Marcus..." Lisa stopped typing. "The kids are getting sick. Not enough to eat. Too much stress. Dr. Martinez says some of them won't make it through winter." Winter on Haven's Rest was brutal. Even with heating systems, the cold could kill, and their heating systems were failing one by one. Marcus stood up and walked to the small window that looked out onto the tunnel. Through the thick glass, he could see people moving like ghosts. 50,000 people lived in these tunnels now. 50,000 souls that the galaxy had forgotten. "Keep trying the communications," he told Lisa. "Keep sending that beacon." In Shelter 12, Father Hayes was holding a prayer service. 20 people sat on the floor around him, holding hands. The old priest's voice was rough from talking too much, but he kept going. "We are not alone," he said. "Even here, even now, we are not alone. Someone will come. Someone will hear our call." Marcus wanted to believe him, but faith was hard when plasma fire shook the ground above your head. He walked to the deepest part of the tunnel system, where Chief Engineer Bob Mitchell was working on the beacon transmitter. Bob was covered in grease and sweat, his tools spread out around him like metal prayer beads. "How's it looking, Bob?" "The beacon's working fine," Bob said without looking up. "Strong signal, clear message. It's reaching out there, Marcus. Question is anyone listening?" The transmitter was a simple thing. It sent out the same message over and over. Haven's Rest colony under attack. 50,000 civilians need immediate help. Please respond, please help us. Simple words, but they carried the weight of 50,000 lives. Marcus climbed up to the surface entrance. The door was thick metal, built to keep out radiation and hostile atmosphere. He pressed his face to the small window and looked out at his world. Haven's Rest had been beautiful once. Green fields where they grew food, clean cities with schools and parks, a spaceport where ships came and went like mechanical birds. Now, it was ash and fire. The Talvari ships hung in the sky like floating tombstones. Every few minutes they would fire down at something. A building, a vehicle, sometimes just empty ground. They were showing the humans below that they could destroy anything, anytime they wanted. War Marshal Krev was their leader. Marcus had seen him on the communication screens before they went dark. A tall creature with 4 arms and skin like metal scales. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together when he spoke. Humans, Krev had said in that first message. You are weak. You are far from home. No one will come to help you. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick. That was 3 months ago. The humans of Haven's Rest had not surrendered, but every day, more of them died. Marcus went back down into the tunnels. In Shelter 5, he found Kate Rivers teaching a group of children. Kate was a colonial defense officer, but there wasn't much to defend anymore. So she taught kids how to read and write, trying to keep their minds off the war above. "Tell us the story again," said a little girl named Amy. She was maybe 7 years old with bright eyes that hadn't lost hope yet. "Which story?" Kate asked. "About the ghost ships, about the ones that protect us." Kate smiled, but Marcus could see the sadness in her eyes. "Long ago," she began, "humanity built ships that could travel between the stars. Some of these ships were very special, very powerful. They could appear and disappear like ghosts, and they watched over human colonies, keeping them safe." "Are they real?" asked a boy named Peter. "I don't know," Kate said honestly. "But I like to think they are. I like to think that somewhere out there someone is watching over us." The children nodded and smiled. They wanted to believe in ghost ships and heroes who would come to save them. Marcus wished he could believe too. That night, he lay on his thin mattress and listened to the sounds of the tunnels, people talking quietly, someone coughing, the hum of recycled air being pumped through the vents, and far above, very faint, the sound of plasma fire hitting the ground. 50,000 people, 50,000 human beings who had done nothing wrong, except live on a world that someone else wanted. The distress beacon kept broadcasting its simple message into the dark space between stars. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to sleep, wondering if anyone out there was listening. In the deepest part of space, something was indeed listening, something that had been waiting for a very long time. But Marcus didn't know that yet. None of them did. All they could do was hope, and survive one more day in the tunnels beneath their dying world. 2 weeks passed like a slow nightmare. War Marshal Krev stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching the human world burn below. His forearms moved across different control panels, while his yellow eyes studied the tactical display. The humans were still hiding in their holes like rats. "Status report," he growled to his second-in-command. "All surface installations destroyed, War Marshal. The humans have retreated completely underground. Our sensors show they still have significant population in the tunnel systems." Krev's mouth opened, showing rows of sharp teeth in what passed for a Talvari smile. "Good. Let them suffer a little longer. My young warriors need target practice." On the bridge around him, younger Talvari officers watched the displays with eager eyes. This was their first real combat mission. To them, this siege was like a training exercise with live targets, sir, said Sub-Commander Vex, a female Talvari with silver markings on her scales. "Why don't we simply crack the planet? Our fleet has enough firepower to split the world in half." "Because, young Vex, there is no honor in quick victory, no lesson learned." Krev's voice was like grinding stone. "When we finally finish these humans, word will spread throughout their space. They will know what happens to colonies that resist. The Talvari Empire. Below them, Lieutenant Corps was running bombing practice with the newest pilots. Every few hours, they would pick a random section of the planet and rain plasma fire on it. Sometimes they hit human structures. Sometimes they just made pretty explosions in empty fields. This is almost too easy, Corps reported. The humans have no orbital defense left. Their ships are destroyed. They cannot even shoot back anymore. Creve nodded. Easy victory was exactly what he wanted. In 3 days, they would begin the final assault on the tunnel systems. Gas attacks first, then ground troops to finish off any survivors. Clean, simple, efficient. But something bothered him. In all his years of conquest, Krev had never seen humans give up so completely. Usually, they kept fighting even when they had no chance of winning. These humans just hid. Keep monitoring their communications, he ordered. I want to know what they're planning. Down in the tunnels, the humans weren't planning anything. They were just trying to survive. Marcus stood in the main meeting room looking at faces that got thinner every day. The colony council had shrunk from 12 people to 8. 4 had died in the bombing raids. The remaining 8 looked like walking ghosts. Food supplies? Marcus asked. 7 days left, reported Supply Chief Dan Miller. 8 if we cut children's rations too. Silence filled the room. Nobody wanted to starve children, but they were running out of choices. Medical situation? Dr. Martinez, an old woman with kind eyes, shook her head. I've lost 12 patients this week, not from injuries, from hunger, stress, disease. The children are weakest. Some of them. She stopped talking and wiped her eyes. Tom Blake hit the table with his fist. There has to be something we can do. We can't just sit here and wait to die. What do you suggest? Lisa asked quietly. We have no ships, no weapons that can reach orbit, no way to fight back. All we can do is hope someone receives our distress. Signal. How long have we been broadcasting? Asked Father Hayes. 97 days, Bob answered from the corner. He looked older than his 50 years, bent over from constant work on failing systems. The beacon goes out every 6 hours, automatic. Same message every time. Marcus walked to the small communications console and activated the display. The beacon's message appeared on screen in simple text. Haven's Rest Colony under attack. Coordinates 847-332-119. 50,000 civilians need immediate assistance. Talvari forces overwhelming. Please respond. Please help. Such simple words. Such a desperate plea sent into the vast emptiness of space. Has anyone responded? Any signal at all? Marcus asked. Bob shook his head. Nothing. Not even automated traffic control responses. It's like we're screaming into a dead universe. In Shelter 9, the food riots had started 3 days ago. Kate, Rivers walked through the damaged corridor, stepping over broken boxes and scattered supplies. 20 families had fought over the last week's rations. 3 people were seriously hurt. 1 man had a broken nose. A woman had knife cuts on her arms. This can't happen again, Kate told the crowd gathered around her. We have to work together or we all die. Easy for you to say, shouted Jake Peterson, a miner with angry eyes. Your family gets the same rations as everyone else, but my kids are crying themselves to sleep every night because they're hungry. Other voices joined in. Angry voices. Scared voices. People pushed closer to Kate, and she felt the crowd's mood turning dangerous. Listen to me. Kate raised her voice. I know. You're hungry. I know you're scared. We all are. But fighting each other won't bring more food. It won't make the Talvari go away. All it does is make us weaker. Then what do we do? Asked Maria Santos, holding her baby close to her chest. The baby was too thin, its cry too weak. What do we do when there's no food left? Kate didn't have an answer. None of them did. In the deepest shelter, Father Hayes held prayer services 3 times a day now. More people came each time. Even people who had never believed in anything were coming to listen to his words. I know some of you think God has abandoned us, the old priest said to the crowd of 40 people sitting on the cold floor. I know it feels like we're alone in the dark, but I want you to remember something. He held up an old, worn book. His Bible had survived 2 wars and 40 years of preaching. Now it might be the last Bible left on Haven's Rest. Darkness always comes before the dawn. The storm always passes, and sometimes help comes from places we never expected. "Where's our help, Father?" asked old Ben Clark, a farmer whose fields were nothing but ash now. "We've been calling for 3 months. Nobody's coming." Father Hayes smiled, but his eyes were sad. "Maybe they are coming, Ben. Maybe they're already on their way. Space is big, and even the fastest ships take time to travel. Or maybe," said a bitter voice from the back, "maybe nobody cares about a mining colony on the edge of nowhere." The crowd got quiet. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Above ground, the Talvari continued their casual destruction. Today they decided to target the old school building. It had been empty for months, but they bombed it anyway, just because they could. Lieutenant Corr reported the successful strike to War Marshal Krev. "Direct hit on human education facility. Structure completely destroyed." "Excellent," Krev replied without interest. He was studying star charts, planning the fleet's next conquest after they finished with Haven's Rest. There were 3 more human colonies within striking distance, all of them probably just as weak as this one. But something nagged at him, a feeling he couldn't identify. In his 50 years of military service, Krev had learned to trust his instincts. Right now, those instincts were telling him something was wrong. "Subcommander Vex," he called. "Are our long-range sensors operating at full capacity?" "Yes, War Marshal. We have complete coverage of this system and 3 neighboring systems. Nothing larger than an asteroid could approach without our knowledge." "And the humans' distress signal?" "Still broadcasting on schedule. Same pathetic message every 6 hours. Our jammers prevent it from reaching beyond local space, of course." Krev nodded, but the feeling remained. Something was coming. He could sense it, the way predators sense storms approaching. In the tunnels below, Marcus made his evening walk through all the shelters. It was something he did every day, showing people that their leader was still alive, still fighting. In Shelter 15, he found Amy, the little girl who loved stories about ghost ships. She was lying on a thin blanket next to her mother, both of them looking pale and weak. "Mr. Marcus," Amy whispered when she saw him. "Are the ghost ships real?" Marcus knelt down beside her. Her mother was asleep, exhausted from hunger and worry. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I hope they are." "I dreamed about one last night," Amy said, her voice so quiet he had to lean close to hear. "It was big and dark and beautiful. And it was coming to help us." Marcus felt tears in his eyes. Children shouldn't have to dream about salvation from the stars. They should dream about toys and games and happy things. "What did the ship look like in your dream?" "Like a shadow with teeth," Amy whispered, then closed her eyes and went to sleep. Marcus sat there for a long time, watching the sick child breathe. Outside, the Talvari ships continued their patient destruction of his world. The distress beacon kept sending its hopeless message into the void. But somewhere in the darkness between stars, something had heard that message. Something old and patient and very, very dangerous. Something was coming to Haven's Rest. The war was about to change forever. The alarm came at 0347 hours, colony time. Bob Mitchell was deep in the maintenance tunnels, trying to fix a water recycler that had broken down again. His hands were covered in grease and his back ached from crawling through narrow spaces. At 62 years old, he was too old for this kind of work, but he was the only engineer left alive. The proximity alarm made him jump so hard he hit his head on a pipe. "What the hell?" Bob crawled out of the tunnel and ran to the nearest communications panel. The screen was flashing red warnings. "Unknown contact, detected bearing, 127.4, mark 85.2, distance, 12.7 million kilometers. Classification, unknown." Bob's heart started beating faster. In 3 months of siege, nothing had entered this system except Talvari ships. Nothing. He activated his comm unit. "Marcus, you need to get down here right now." In the command bunker, Marcus arrived 5 minutes later, still pulling on his shirt. Lisa was already there, her fingers flying over the sensor controls. Tom stood behind her, holding his rifle like it could somehow help against whatever was out there. "What do we have?" Marcus asked. "Single contact, dropped out of hyperspace. At the edge of the system 12 minutes ago," Lisa reported. Her voice was steady, but Marcus could see the excitement in her eyes. "It's not Talvari. Signature is completely different." "Human?" Tom asked. I don't know. The signature doesn't match anything in our database. It's like nothing I've ever seen." Bob pushed past them to look at the display. His old eyes squinted at the numbers scrolling across the screen. "That's impossible. Look at the energy readings." Marcus looked. The numbers didn't make sense. Whatever was out there was generating power levels that should have required a ship the size of a small moon, but the mass readings showed something much smaller. "Could the sensors be wrong?" Marcus asked. "Triple-checked everything," Bob replied. "Sensors are working fine. Whatever that thing is, it's real." On the Talvari flagship, War Marshal Krev was having the same conversation with his officers. "Report," he commanded as he strode onto the bridge. His forearms moved in agitation, a sign that he was either very angry or very worried. "Single contact, War Marshal." Appeared at the system. "Edge 14 minutes ago, unknown configuration." Subcommander Vex was bent over the sensor station, her silver scales reflecting the display lights. "Sir, the energy signature is unusual. Our computers cannot identify the vessel type." "Human?" Krev asked. "Unknown. The power readings suggest a ship much larger than what our visual scans detect. There's also..." Vex paused, looking confused. "There's something strange about its hyperspace exit signature. It's like the ship phased into normal space rather than dropped out of hyperspace." Krev felt that nagging feeling grow stronger. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered a ship that his computers couldn't identify. "Distance and heading? 12.3 million kilometers and closing. Current speed suggests it will reach the inner system in approximately 6 hours. Weapons status? Unknown. We detect no active weapon signatures, but..." Vex hesitated. "Sir, we're having difficulty maintaining sensor lock. The ship seems to be shifting somehow, like it's not entirely there." Krev's yellow eyes narrowed. "Send a communication, standard challenge frequency." Lieutenant Kor activated the communications array. "Unknown vessel, this is War Marshal Krev of the Talvari Empire. You are entering a restricted military zone. Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed." They waited. No response. "Send it again," Krev ordered. Still nothing. "Sir," reported the sensor operator. "The vessel has changed course. It's now heading directly for our fleet formation." Down in the tunnels, word spread quickly. For the first time in 3 months, something had arrived in their system, something that wasn't trying to kill them. Father Hayes called an emergency prayer service. 50 people crammed into the small chapel space, more than had ever come before. Even people who had never prayed in their lives knelt on the cold floor. "Is it really them?" whispered Maria Santos, holding her thin baby. "Is it really help?" "We don't know yet," Father Hayes said gently. "But after 3 months of darkness, any light is a blessing. Let us pray that whoever they are, they come in peace." In Shelter 7, Kate Rivers was trying to calm down a group of excited children. Amy, the little girl who dreamed of ghost ships, was practically bouncing with energy. "Is it the shadow ship from my dream?" Amy asked. "Is it coming to save us?" "We don't know what kind of ship it is yet," Kate said. But, privately, she was thinking about the old stories, the legends that military people whispered about when they thought nobody was listening. Stories about ships that didn't officially exist. Ships that appeared when humanity needed them most. Ships that could end wars before they began. Marcus called an emergency council meeting. The 8 surviving council members gathered around their small table, looking more hopeful than they had in months. "What do we know for certain?" Marcus asked. "One ship, unknown type, heading toward the inner system," Lisa reported. The Talvari are clearly as confused as we are. Their communication chatter has increased significantly. Could it be a rescue ship from Earth? Asked Dr. Martinez. Impossible, Bob said, shaking his head. Even if they got our distress signal on day one, it would take 4 months minimum for any ship to reach us from the nearest naval base. We've only been broadcasting for 3 months. Then what is it? Asked Supply Chief Dan Miller. Nobody had an answer. On the Talvari flagship, the mystery was deepening. War Marshal, reported Subcommander Vex. Our targeting computers cannot achieve weapon lock on the approaching vessel. Every time we try, the lock slips away. What do you mean, slips away? It's as if the ship is ghosting in and out of our sensor range. Our computers lock on, then suddenly there's nothing there, then it appears again in a slightly different position. Krev studied the tactical display. The unknown ship was now 4 million kilometers away and still approaching. It moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something made of metal and circuits. Fleet status? All ships at battle stations, War Marshal. Weapons charged and ready. Good. When that ship reaches weapons range, we destroy it. Whatever it is, whoever sent it, they made a mistake coming here. But even as he said the words, Krev felt doubt creeping into his mind. Something about this situation felt wrong. Very wrong. In the deepest part of the tunnel system, old Ben Clark was telling stories to a group of miners. Ben had served in the Navy 40 years ago, back when humanity was still fighting the border wars. I heard stories when I was young, Ben said in his scratchy voice. Stories about ships that the brass never talked about, black projects, ships that could do things that normal ships couldn't. What kind of things? Asked Jake Peterson, the miner who had started the food riots. Stealth technology beyond anything publicly known. Weapons that could crack a planet. Ships that could phase in and out of normal space-time. Ben's eyes were distant, remembering. They called them ghost ships. Shadow ships. Ships that existed in the spaces between official records. You think that's what's coming? Asked another miner. I don't know, but I'll tell you this. In 40 years, I never saw anything that could make Talvari sensors confused. Those lizards have the best detection technology in known space. Above them, the mysterious ship continued its approach. At 3 million kilometers, the Talvari fleet could finally get visual confirmation. What they saw made no sense. The ship was sleek and black, about half the size of a Talvari cruiser, but it moved like it was alive, flowing through space rather than flying through it. Its hull seemed to absorb light, making it difficult to see clearly, even on direct visual. Ship configuration unknown, reported the sensor operator. Hull composition, unknown. Drive system unknown. Sir, this vessel doesn't match anything in our database of known galactic civilizations. War Marshal Krev stared at the image on his main screen. In 50 years of military service, he had seen ships from dozens of different species. This looked like none of them. It looked like something that shouldn't exist. Sir, Subcommander, Vex called out. I'm reading massive energy buildup from the unknown vessel. Whatever they're powering up, it's beyond our ability to measure. All ships, prepare to fire, Krev commanded. On my mark. But before he could give the order, something happened that changed everything. The black ship simply disappeared. Not hyperspace jump, not cloaking device, it just faded away like a shadow when the sun goes behind clouds. Where is it? Krev roared. Unknown, sir. All sensors show empty space. Find it. Find it now. But their sensors found nothing. The mysterious ship had vanished, as completely as if it had never existed. In the tunnels below, Bob was staring at his sensors in confusion. It was there. Then it wasn't. I've never seen anything like it. Marcus felt hope and fear fighting in his chest. Is it gone? Did it leave? I don't think so, Bob said slowly. I think it's still here. I think it's just hiding. Outside, in the cold space between Haven's Rest and the Talvari fleet, something moved in the darkness. Something patient. Something dangerous. Something that had been waiting a very long time for this moment. 20 years ago, the ship had died. Captain James Cross remembered that day clearly, even though it felt like a lifetime ago. The Reaper's Edge had been humanity's greatest secret, their most advanced warship. Built in hidden shipyards, crewed, by volunteers who officially didn't exist, designed to be the ultimate weapon. Then came the test flight that went wrong. They had been testing the phase drive, humanity's greatest breakthrough in space technology. The ability to slip between dimensions, to exist in the spaces between normal reality. But something had happened. The ship had phased out of normal space and couldn't phase back. For 20 years they had drifted in the shadow realm, watching the universe through a gray filter. They could see everything, but nothing could see them. They watched human colonies grow and prosper. They watched wars begin and end. They watched their own names added to lists of the dead. But they never stopped listening to the distress signals. "Captain," called out Navigator Beth Stone from her station. "We're approaching the target system, Haven's Rest Colony." Captain Cross was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from 20 years of trying to fix an unfixable ship. His crew of 47 had aged with him in the gray space between worlds. They had become ghosts, watching humanity from the shadows. "Status of the phase drive?" Cross asked. Chief Engineer Mike Ryan looked up from his console. "Still unstable, sir. We can phase back into normal space, but only for short periods, maybe minutes at a time before the system overloads." "How short?" "Best case? 5 minutes. Worst case? 30 seconds. Cross nodded. "It would have to be enough. Tactical report," he called to Weapons Officer Sarah Kim. "Talvari fleet consists of 12 heavy cruisers and 4 battleships," Sarah reported. "They have the planet completely surrounded, standard siege formation. They're not expecting any resistance." Cross studied the tactical display. 16 Talvari ships against 1 experimental human vessel that might only exist in normal space for a few minutes. The odds were about right. "All hands." Cross spoke into the ship's communication system. "This is the captain. For 20 years we've been dead men walking. Today we get to be soldiers again. Today we remind the galaxy why humanity is not to be underestimated." In the tunnels below, Bob was still staring at his sensors when something impossible happened. The ship reappeared. Not gradually, not fading in like a cloaking device shutting down. 1 second there was empty space, the next second there was a ship hanging in the void like it had always been there. "Contact re-established," Bob reported to Marcus over the comm. "Distance 2 million kilometers and closing." "Same ship?" "I think so. But Marcus..." Bob paused, checking his readings again. "The energy signature is different now, much more powerful, like it was holding back before and now it's not." On the Talvari flagship, alarms were screaming. "War Marshal." Subcommander Vex called out, "The unknown vessel has reappeared, distance 1.8 million kilometers." Krev strode to the tactical display. The human ship hung there on the screen like a dark omen. Something about its shape made his warrior instincts scream warnings. "Fleet disposition?" "All ships in position, sir. Weapons charged and ready." "Good. Send 1 final warning, then we destroy it." Lieutenant Core activated communications. "Unknown vessel, this is your final warning. Identify yourself or be destroyed, Ochio." A moment there was only static. Then a voice came through the speakers. A human voice, calm and steady and absolutely terrifying in its confidence. "This is Captain James Cross of the Earthship Reaper's Edge. Stand down immediately and withdraw from this system." The bridge went silent. Every Talvari officer stared at the communication panel like it had spoken in ancient languages. Sub-Commander Vex was the first to find her voice. "Sir, that ship designation, Reaper's Edge, it's not in any of our intelligence files." "Check again," Krev ordered. Vex's claws clicked rapidly over her console. "Still nothing, sir. According to our records, no ship with that name has ever existed in human space." But Krev was remembering something. Whispers. Stories told in dark corners of military bars. Legends about human ships that officially didn't exist. Ships that appeared when human colonies were threatened and disappeared when the threat was over. Ghost ships. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, I'm detecting massive power fluctuations from the human vessel. Energy levels are... Sir, they're off the scale. Whatever they're powering up, it's beyond our ability to measure. Down in the tunnels, people were gathering around every working communication panel. The news had spread quickly. A human ship had arrived. A ship with a name that sounded like death itself, Reaper's Edge. I know that name, whispered old Ben Clark. His face had gone pale. Sweet mother of God, I know that name. What is it? Asked Jake Peterson. Ben's voice was barely audible. 20 years ago, there were rumors. Stories about a ship that the Navy was building in secret. They called it the Reaper Project. It was supposed to be... He stopped, shaking his head. They said it was impossible. They said it couldn't be done. What couldn't be done? A ship that could phase in and out of normal space. A ship that could appear anywhere, anytime, without warning. A ship that could end entire wars in minutes. The miners looked at each other with growing hope. You think that's really it? Asked Maria Santos. Ben looked up at the ceiling as if he could see through all the rock and metal to the ship floating in space above them. If it is, then God help the Talvari, because they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. The Reaper's Edge, Captain Cross was studying the tactical situation. 16 enemy ships, 50,000 civilians depending on him. A phase drive that might fail at any moment. He had faced worse odds. Sarah, target selection? All enemy vessels. Locked in, sir. Primary targets are the 2 command ships. Secondary targets are the heavy weapon platforms. Mike, how long can we maintain phase stability? Unknown, sir. The system is more unstable than usual. Could be 5 minutes, could be 30 seconds. Beth, bring us to attack position, full stealth approach. Aye, sir. The Reaper's Edge began to move. Not flying through space like a normal ship, but sliding between dimensions, existing in multiple realities at once. To the Talvari sensors, it appeared and disappeared like a ghost. War Marshal Krev watched the tactical display with growing unease. The human ship was impossible to track. One moment it was 2 million kilometers away, the next it was 1 million. Then it would vanish completely before reappearing somewhere else. Can we target it? He asked. Negative, sir. Every time we achieve weapon lock, the ship phases out of normal space. Our targeting computers cannot compensate. Then we wait for it to come to us, Krev decided. All ships, defensive formation. When that ship phases back into normal space, we hit it with everything we have. But the human ship had other plans. Captain Cross stood on his bridge, watching the enemy formation on his tactical display. 16 ships arranged in a perfect defensive pattern. They were waiting for him to attack conventionally. They were about to learn that the Reaper's Edge didn't do anything conventionally. Sarah, are you ready? All weapons charged and targeted, sir. Just give the word. Mike, phase drive status. Holding steady for now, sir, but I can't guarantee how long. Cross looked around his bridge at the crew that had died 20 years. Ego but kept fighting anyway. Men and women who had given up everything to serve on a ship that officially didn't exist. Ladies and gentlemen, he said quietly, let's remind the galaxy that humanity protects its own. He turned to face the main screen, where the Talvari fleet waited in their perfect formation. All stations, battle ready. Prepare for phase shift to normal space. The ship around them hummed with power that defied physics. Energy that shouldn't exist flowed through systems that couldn't work. The Reaper's Edge prepared to return to the world of the living. On my mark, Cross said. In the tunnels below, 50,000 people held their breath. In space above, 16 Talvari ships waited for an enemy they couldn't understand. And somewhere between dimensions, a ghost ship prepared to become very, very real. Mark, said Captain Cross. The war was about to end. 1427 Colony Standard Time. The Reaper's Edge phased into normal space directly in the center of the Talvari fleet formation. War Marshal Krev had exactly 1 second to realize that everything he knew about warfare was about to change forever. Second, 1, the human ship materialized between his flagship and the heavy cruiser Death's Talon, like a shadow becoming solid. But it wasn't just appearing. It was doing something impossible. Reality bent around the Reaper's edge. "What in the name of the ancestors?" Krev whispered, as his sensors went completely insane. The human ship was generating a field that his science officers had no name for. Space-time itself was twisting around the vessel, creating pockets of accelerated time in areas where time moved backward. Half of his fleet simply stopped. Not destroyed, not damaged. Stopped. 8. Talvari ships hung motionless in space, their crews frozen between one heartbeat and the next. Their weapons were charged but couldn't fire. Their engines were running but couldn't move. They existed in bubbles of stalled time, watching helplessly as seconds became minutes, became hours in the space around them. On the heavy cruiser Starkiller, Captain Thex tried to give orders, but his words came out so slowly that each syllable took 30 seconds to form. His crew moved like they were swimming through thick liquid. Their plasma cannons charged with infinite slowness, each energy cycle taking forever. "Impossible," Krev breathed, watching his tactical display show 8 ships that were technically functional but completely useless. Second 2. The remaining 8 Talvari ships opened fire with everything they had: plasma bolts, quantum torpedoes, particle beams, enough firepower to crack a moon. All of it aimed at the black human ship floating in their midst. Every shot passed through the Reaper's edge like it was made of smoke. "Target is non-corporeal," screamed Sub-Commander Vex. "All weapons passing through without impact." The human ship wasn't just phasing in and out of normal space. It was existing in multiple dimensions at the same time, shifting between realities faster than Talvari weapons could track. Lieutenant Kor fired his ship's main cannon directly at the human vessel from point-blank range. The massive plasma bolt passed through the Reaper's edge and struck the Talvari battleship Iron Fist instead, crippling it instantly. "Cease fire. Cease fire," Krev commanded. "We're hitting our own ships." But it was too late. In their panic, 3 more Talvari vessels had fired at the ghostly human ship. Their weapons passed harmlessly through their target and struck their own fleetmates. The humans weren't even shooting back, and the Talvari were destroying themselves. Second 3 War. Marshal Krev tried to give the order to retreat. He opened his mouth to command his fleet to withdraw, to escape this nightmare that defied everything he understood about the universe. No sound came out. He tried again, still nothing. Around him, his bridge crew moved in slow motion, their voices reduced to deep, rumbling sounds that made no sense. The air itself seemed thick and heavy, like breathing underwater. The human ship had done something to space around, his flagship. Time was moving differently here. Seconds stretched into minutes. Minutes became hours. Krev realized with growing horror that while he could think and see normally, his body was trapped in slowed time. He could watch everything happening, but he couldn't affect it. He was a prisoner in his own command chair, forced to witness the destruction of his fleet. On his screens, he could see the other Talvari ships trying to escape. But something was wrong with space itself around the human vessel. Ships that tried to jump to hyperspace found their drives simply wouldn't engage. An impossible gravitational field surrounded the entire battlefield, generated by technology that shouldn't exist. The Talvari fleet was trapped like insects in amber. Second 4 Captain Cross stood on the bridge of the Reaper's edge, watching the chaos unfold around his ship. "Phase drive holding steady," reported Chief Engineer Mike Ryan. "But we're pushing it beyond safe limits. The dimensional barriers are starting to break down." "Weapon status?" Cross asked. "All systems ready, sir. But we haven't fired a shot. The enemy is destroying themselves." Cross nodded. It was exactly what he had hoped would happen. The Reaper's edge wasn't designed to destroy fleets through brute force. It was designed to break the enemy's ability to fight at all. On his tactical display, he could see the results of 4 seconds of engagement. 8 Talvari ships trapped in time distortion fields, their crews experiencing minutes for every second that passed in normal space. 3 Talvari ships damaged by friendly fire, their own weapons turned against them by the ship's dimensional phasing. 5 Talvari ships trapped by artificial gravity fields, unable to move or escape. The flagship frozen in a temporal bubble, its command crew slowed to near immobility. 16 of the most powerful warships in known space, reduced to helplessness by a single human vessel that most people believed was a myth. "Sir," called Navigator Beth Stone, "the phase drive is starting to fluctuate. We may lose dimensional stability soon." "How long do we have?" "Maybe one more second in this configuration." Cross looked at the trapped Talvari fleet. "War Marshal." Krev's flagship hung motionless in space, its commander frozen in his chair like a statue. It was time to end this. Cross activated the ship's communication system. His voice would be transmitted on every frequency, heard by every ship in the system, Talvari and human alike. Second 5. This is Captain James Cross of the Earthship Reaper's Edge. The words cut through space like a blade. In the tunnels below, 50,000 colonists stopped breathing. On the Talvari ships, crews that could still move turned to their communication panels in terror. For 3 months, you have attacked defenseless civilians. You have bombed schools and hospitals. You have shown no mercy to the innocent. Cross's voice was calm, cold, and absolutely terrifying in its certainty. You believed that no one would come to help them. You were wrong. The Reaper's Edge began to change. The ship's hull, which had appeared solid black, suddenly showed its true nature. Weapon ports opened along its sides like hungry mouths. Energy conduits glowed with power that made the Talvari sensors scream warnings. This is humanity's final warning to the Talvari Empire. Leave this system immediately. Leave human space entirely. If you return, if you threaten any human colony ever again, we will find you. War Marshal Krev, trapped in his chair by slowed time, felt something he had never experienced in 50 years of conquest. Pure, overwhelming terror. We are the Reaper's Edge. We are the shadow that watches from between the stars. We are what happens when humanity says, enough. The human ship began to fade, phasing back toward whatever dimension it had come from. But before it disappeared, completely, every communication screen in the system showed the same image, a star map of Talvari space. Every major world, every military base, every important target marked with red dots. The message was clear. We know where you live. You have 1 hour to begin your withdrawal. Do not test our patience. The Reaper's Edge vanished, leaving only empty space where it had been. For a moment, nothing moved. The Talvari fleet hung motionless in space, their crews stunned by what they had witnessed. Then, as the temporal fields faded and the gravity wells collapsed, War Marshal Krev found his voice again. "All ships," he whispered, his words barely audible. "Emergency withdrawal, full retreat, now." The Talvari fleet scattered like frightened birds, jumping to hyperspace as fast as their engines could charge. They left behind their wounded, their pride, and their belief that they were the strongest warriors in the galaxy. In the tunnels below Haven's Rest, silence reigned for a full minute. Then someone started cheering. The sound spread from shelter to shelter, tunnel to tunnel, until 50,000 voices rose in celebration. Children laughed, adults cried. Father Hayes fell to his knees and thanked God for miracles. Marcus stood in the command bunker, staring at sensors that showed empty space where the Talvari fleet had been. "Is it over?" he asked. Bob was grinning so wide his face hurt. "They're gone. All of them, running like scared rabbits." Outside, the first humans emerged from the tunnels in 3 months. They looked up at a sky that was finally clear of alien ships. The sun was shining. Birds were singing. Haven's Rest was free. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Reaper's Edge continued its silent patrol, watching over humanity's children with invisible eyes. The war was over. Humanity had won, and the galaxy would never forget the day a ghost ship reminded them why humans were not to be underestimated. The end. The emergency lights bathed the Galactic Council chamber in an eerie red glow. 12 representatives from the most powerful species in known space sat in uncomfortable silence. Their normal arguments and political games had disappeared. Fear had replaced them. Admiral Reed stepped forward, his uniform torn and stained with what looked like oil. His face, normally proud and confident, now showed exhaustion and defeat. "The Void Swarm has taken the Proxima system," Reed said, his voice rough. "That's the third system in 2 weeks." A gasp rippled through the chamber. The Proxima system had been home to over 8 billion beings. "How many survivors?" asked the Lumi ambassador, her translucent skin pulsing with concerned light patterns. Reed's face hardened. "None that we know of. The swarm doesn't leave survivors." The council leader, an ancient being who remembered the founding of their alliance, leaned forward. "Admiral Reed, please show us the latest battle footage." The center of the chamber lit up with a hologram. It showed hundreds of council ships forming a defensive line around a blue-green planet. Then, something that looked like a storm made of dark energy appeared. It moved unlike anything natural, sometimes flowing like water, sometimes jumping like electricity, sometimes spreading like smoke. Wherever it touched a ship, the lights went out. Then the ship crumpled like paper, crushed by an invisible hand. "We lost 317 ships," Reed said. The Void Swarm barely slowed down. The council chamber erupted in panicked voices. "We must try again to communicate with it," insisted the Lumi ambassador. "Perhaps if we've tried," shouted Reed. "It doesn't respond to any signals. It doesn't negotiate. It just consumes." "Then, we need better weapons," said the representative from the Mech Collective, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused. "If we reconfigure our energy cannons to—" "We've tried every weapon in our arsenal," Reed interrupted. "Nothing works for long. The swarm adapts too quickly." "Then we must retreat," said Elder Voss, his ancient voice barely above a whisper. "Abandon the outer systems and fortify our core worlds." Reed shook his head. "Our scientists have tracked its path. At its current speed, the swarm will reach every inhabited world in our space within 6 months. There's nowhere to run." Silence fell again, heavier than before. In the corner of the chamber sat Tom, the human representative. Humans were relatively new to the council, having joined only 30 years ago. They were still seen as unpredictable and emotional by many of the older species. Tom had been quiet throughout the meeting, listening carefully and watching the other representatives panic. Now, he cleared his throat. "There is one option we haven't considered." All eyes turned to him. The council leader tilted his head. "Speak, Representative Tom." Tom stood up slowly. He was shorter than most beings in the room, but something in his steady gaze made them pay attention. 10 years ago, there was a similar incident. A smaller version of the Void Swarm entered council space near the Outer Rim territories. "I don't recall such an event," said the mech representative. "It was kept quiet," Tom replied, "because the way it was defeated wasn't officially sanctioned." Tom touched a control panel on his wrist. The hologram in the center of the room changed, showing grainy footage of a much smaller dark energy storm. Then something new entered the frame. A ship unlike any council vessel. It looked cobbled together from parts of different ships with strange modifications and weapon systems that shouldn't work together. The mystery ship dove straight into the heart of the small swarm, moving in ways that defied normal spaceflight. It fired weapons that created strange distortions in the fabric of space. Where council weapons had failed, these bizarre weapons tore through the swarm. The council members watched in stunned silence as the strange ship single-handedly destroyed the swarm, then disappeared into deep space before council forces could intercept it. "What was that?" demanded the council leader. "What ship is that?" Tom took a deep breath. "It's called Dangerous, and its crew are, well, they're the reason I said this option hasn't been considered." "Explain yourself," ordered Elder Voss. "The ship is crewed mainly by humans," Tom said, his voice steady despite the shocked looks. "But not council-approved humans. These are outcasts, criminals by our laws. They use technologies we've banned as too dangerous or unpredictable." "Criminals?" The Lumi ambassador's skin flashed with alarm patterns. "You suggest we place our fate in the hands of outlaws?" I suggest we place our fate in the hands of the only beings who have ever successfully defeated the Void Swarm, Tom countered. Admiral Reed stepped closer to the hologram, studying the strange ship. Why have I never heard of this incident or this ship? Because after they destroyed the swarm, the council of that time decided they were too dangerous to acknowledge publicly, Tom explained. Their methods violated too many safety protocols. Their weapon systems are unstable and unpredictable, effective but forbidden for good reason. So instead of thanking them for saving lives, we erased them from history? Reed asked, his voice sharp with disbelief. Politics, Tom said simply. The council couldn't be seen endorsing their methods. And now you suggest we not only acknowledge them but ask for their help? The council leader's voice was heavy with concern. Tom nodded. Yes, because they've done what our entire fleet couldn't do. Stop the Void Swarm. Do you know where to find these outcasts? Asked the mech representative. Not exactly, Tom admitted, but I know where to start looking. They operate in the unregulated zones beyond council space, a region called the Scatter. The Scatter is lawless and dangerous, warned Elder Voss. Many who enter never return. Tom smiled grimly, which makes it the perfect hiding place for those who don't want to be found by the council. The council leader rose to his full height, towering over Tom. You realize what you're asking? To break our own laws? To seek help from those we've branded as dangerous? With respect, Tom replied, meeting the leader's gaze. I'm asking us to survive. The laws won't matter if we're all dead. Admiral Reed stepped forward. I've lost too many good people to this swarm. If there's even a small chance these outcasts can help us, I support trying to find them. The council chamber erupted again, voices rising in argument. Some supported the desperate plan, others condemned it as madness. The debate raged for hours, tempers flaring as the red emergency lights continued to pulse overhead. Finally, the council leader raised his hand for silence. We will put it to a vote, he announced. Do we seek the help of these outcasts, these users of forbidden technology, these... He hesitated, looking at Tom. These humans who call their ship dangerous? One by one, the representatives voted. Some quickly, some after long moments of hesitation. When the final vote was tallied, the result was 7 in favor, 5 against. Then, it is decided, the council leader said, his voice solemn. Representative Tom, you will lead a delegation to find this ship and its crew. Admiral Reed will provide you with a vessel and security team. Tom nodded, his face serious. Time is critical. The swarm moves quickly. And if you find these outcasts, the council leader added, what makes you think they will help us? We have, as you pointed out, treated them poorly. Tom's expression was grim but determined, because despite everything, they're still human, and humans have a strange habit of helping even those who've wronged them, especially when the stakes are this high. As the council dispersed to prepare for this desperate mission, Admiral Reed approached Tom privately. Do you really believe these outcasts will help us? He asked. Tom watched the hologram of the strange ship one more time before it faded. I believe they're our only hope, he answered quietly. And right now, hope is all we have left. The diplomatic vessel Seeker cut through the darkness of space, traveling far from the safe, well-mapped routes of Council territory. It was a sleek ship, built for speed rather than combat, with the Galactic Council emblem prominently displayed on its hull. Captain Gray stood on the bridge, her back straight and her expression tense. She didn't like this mission. Everything about it went against protocol. How much longer until we reach the Scatter? She asked, not bothering to hide her discomfort. Tom checked the navigation display. About 6 hours. We should drop out of faster-than-light travel before we hit the outer boundary. The Scatter is filled with debris and unstable energy pockets. Gray nodded stiffly. I still think this is a mistake. We're putting a council vessel at risk to find criminals. Criminals who might save trillions of lives, Tom reminded her. Gray didn't answer. Instead, she turned to the other 2 members of the delegation, Kira from the Mech Collective and Dr. Vell of the Lumi. Kira looked more machine than organic, with cybernetic enhancements covering much of her body. As a tactical specialist, she had studied the footage of the mysterious ship Dangerous for hours, trying to understand its weapons and movement patterns. "Their tech shouldn't work," she said, her mechanical eye whirring as she focused on Tom. "The energy configurations they use should be unstable to the point of self-destruction." "And yet they don't explode," Tom replied with a small smile. Dr. Vell floated nearby, her translucent body pulsing with gentle light. "I am more concerned about their psychological state. Beings who choose to live outside society, who embrace danger rather than security. They may not be reasonable negotiators." "We don't need them to be reasonable," Tom said. "We just need them to help us." The journey continued in uneasy silence. 6 hours later, the Seeker dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the region known as the Scatter. The view from the bridge made everyone pause. Before them spread a chaotic mess of broken planets, asteroid fields, and strange energy storms. Scattered throughout were the remains of countless ships, some ancient, some relatively new, all broken. "Sensors detect high radiation levels and unstable gravity pockets," reported the ship's navigator. "Navigating through this will be extremely difficult." "Do we have coordinates for this Junction 8 place?" Captain Gray asked. Tom nodded. "General direction, yes. Specific coordinates? No. Places like Junction 8 don't advertise their location. They prefer visitors to work to find them." Gray frowned. "So how do we locate it?" "We ask," Tom said simply. Over the next 3 days, the Seeker carefully navigated through the Dangerous region, stopping at small outposts and abandoned mining stations. At each stop, Tom would go alone, returning hours later with new information but no direct path. At one particularly rough-looking outpost built into a hollowed asteroid, they received their first solid lead. "There's a trader ship heading to Junction 8 tomorrow," Tom told the others when he returned. "They agreed to let us follow them through the safe paths, for a price." "Which you paid?" Captain Gray asked, disapproval clear in her voice. "From my personal account, not council funds," Tom assured her. "Captain Gray, you need to understand. Out here everything has a price. No one does anything for free or for promises of future payment." The next day, they followed the battered trader ship through a twisting path that no navigation computer could have plotted. They passed through the tail of a comet, used the gravity of a collapsed star to slingshot around a radiation belt, and skimmed dangerously close to a field of debris that looked like the remains of a small moon. Finally, they saw it. Junction 8. It wasn't a planet or a moon, but a massive space station cobbled together from parts of dozens, maybe hundreds of different ships and structures. It spun slowly, creating artificial gravity for its inhabitants. Ships of all shapes and sizes docked at its outer rings. "No wonder we couldn't find it in any database," Captain Gray murmured. "It's not supposed to exist." "Most interesting things aren't," Tom replied. The Seeker docked at the outermost ring as far from the center of the station as possible. Tom suggested they change out of their council uniforms into more casual clothing. Captain Gray refused, but the others agreed. "We need to blend in," Tom explained as they prepared to disembark. "A council ship is already suspicious. Officers in full uniform will be seen as a threat." "We are a threat," Gray responded. "These people are breaking council law by operating this station." Tom sighed. "Out here, the council is just another group making demands and offering nothing in return. Remember that." Junction 8's interior was a shock to the council delegation. The corridors were cramped and winding, with pipes and wires exposed along the walls. The air smelled of machinery, cooking food, and too many bodies in too little space. People of dozens of species pushed past each other. Some recognized council species, others completely unknown. Most alarming to Captain Gray and the others was the open carrying of weapons. Nearly everyone had at least a sidearm visible, and many wore full combat gear. Tom led them to a large central area that served as both a marketplace and a gathering space. Booths selling everything from ship parts to exotic foods lined the walls. In the center, tables were filled with people drinking, eating, and making deals. "This is where we start," Tom said. We need to ask about the dangerous, but carefully. Just mentioning the name might cause problems. Why? Asked Dr. Vell. Because ships with reputations like the dangerous have both friends and enemies, Tom explained. And we don't know which we'll find here. They spent hours moving through the market, Tom carefully asking questions that seemed casual but were designed to gather information. Most people ignored them or provided useless information for payment. Some became hostile at the mere hint of council authority. As the station's artificial day cycle began to dim toward night, they found themselves in a quieter section, at a small bar tucked away from the main market. We're getting nowhere, Captain Gray said, her frustration evident. We should return to the ship and try a different approach tomorrow. Wait, Kira said suddenly, her cybernetic eye focusing across the room. That woman in the corner. She reacted when you mentioned unusual ship modifications to the bartender. Tom followed Kira's gaze. In the darkest corner sat a woman alone, at a table. She was human with short dark hair and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Her clothing was simple but well worn, like someone who valued function over appearance. A tool belt hung around her waist, and her hands showed the calluses of someone who worked with machinery. Stay here, Tom said quietly. Let me approach her alone. Tom walked carefully across the room, stopping a respectful distance from the woman's table. Mind if I join you? He asked. The woman studied him for a long moment. Counsel, she said finally. It wasn't a question. Tom didn't deny it. My name is Tom. I'm looking for a ship. There are hundreds of ships docked at Junction 8, she replied. Be more specific. Tom hesitated, then took the risk. A ship called Dangerous. The woman's expression didn't change, but her posture shifted slightly, becoming more alert. Never heard of it. I think you have, Tom said. And I think you know its crew. What makes you say that? The way you tensed when I said the name. The repair calluses on your hands match the type of modified engines they use. And the fact that you identified me as counsel but haven't called station security to remove me. A small smile touched the woman's lips. Observant, but still wrong. Tom leaned forward. The void swarm has returned, bigger this time. We've lost 3 systems already. Billions dead. We need help. For the first time, genuine emotion crossed the woman's face, a flash of concern quickly hidden. Even if this ship existed, she said quietly, why would its crew help the council? The same council that banned them, hunted them, and erased them from history? Because the swarm doesn't care about old grudges, Tom replied. It will consume everything. Council space, the scatter, all of it. No one will be left to remember who was right or wrong. The woman was silent for a long moment. Then she stood up. Follow me, she said. Just you, tell your friends to stay here. Tom nodded to the others, then followed the woman through a maze of corridors deeper into the station than they had ventured before. She led him to a small, unmarked door, pressed her hand to a hidden scanner, and stepped inside. The room beyond was a private docking bay. And there, floating in the center, was a ship unlike any other, a patchwork of different designs with strange modifications and unusual weapon systems. On its side, barely visible in the dim light, was a worn emblem with a single word. Dangerous. My name is Anna, the woman said, turning to face Tom. Engineer of the Dangerous, now tell me why we should risk our lives for the people who tried to destroy us. Tom stood in the private docking bay, face to face with Anna, the engineer of the Dangerous. The ship loomed behind her, its unusual design both fascinating and unsettling. We should help you because the void swarm threatens everyone, Tom answered, her challenge, including you and your crew. Anna crossed her arms. We've stayed ahead of threats before. We could run to the outer reaches. There's plenty of galaxy left. Not this time, Tom said. This swarm is at least 10 times larger than the one you fought before. Our scientists tracked its path. It's consuming everything in its way, and it's getting faster, A new voice joined the conversation. Let me guess. Your fancy council weapons can't stop it? A man emerged from the ship's airlock. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a face marked by old scars. His eyes had the sharp, assessing look of someone who had seen too many battles. This, Tom guessed, was the captain. No, they can't, Tom admitted. Every conventional weapon we've tried has failed. The swarm adapts too quickly. The captain walked closer, studying Tom, and you remembered the ship that did stop a swarm 10 years ago. A ship you officially claim doesn't exist. Yes. So the council sent you to find us. The same council that declared our technology illegal, branded us criminals, and forced us into exile. Tom didn't flinch from the captain's gaze. Yes, because we're desperate. The captain laughed, but there was no humor in it. At least you're honest. He extended his hand. I'm Jack, captain of the Dangerous. Tom shook his hand. I'm Tom, representative of Earth on the Galactic Council. I know who you are, Jack said. Your face has been on broadcasts, the youngest human ever appointed to the council. Quite the honor. Anna moved to Jack's side. He brought others, a council captain and 2 non-humans. They're waiting in the bar. Jack nodded. Bring them here. If we're going to talk, might as well have everyone present. While Anna left to fetch the others, Jack led Tom aboard the Dangerous. The interior of the ship was as unusual as its exterior. The corridors were narrow but efficient, with equipment secured against every wall. Nothing was wasted and nothing was for show. This isn't what I expected, Tom admitted as they entered what appeared to be a meeting room. The space was cramped, but functional, with a central table bolted to the floor and screens showing ship systems on every wall. What did you expect? Criminals living in filth? Jack asked. Actually, yes, Tom said honestly. The council portrays those who use banned technology as dangerous and unstable. We're dangerous to our enemies, Jack corrected. Unstable is a matter of opinion. The room's door opened and Anna returned with Captain Gray, Kira, and Dr. Vell. Gray's face was tight with disapproval. Kira's cybernetic eye whirred as it scanned the ship's systems, and Dr. Vell's skin pulsed with cautious light patterns. Welcome aboard the Dangerous, Jack said without warmth. Please sit down. Once everyone was seated, Jack pressed a button on the table. Full crew meeting now. Within minutes, 4 more people entered the room. Meet the crew, Jack said. You've already met Anna, our engineer. This is Marcus, weapons specialist. Marcus was shorter than Jack but moved with the fluid grace of a trained fighter. His eyes constantly scanned the room, and his hands never strayed far from the weapon at his hip. Doc, our medic. Doc was tall and thin with a kind face that contrasted with the rest of the crew. His right arm was visibly cybernetic, more advanced than anything Tom had seen in council space. And our non-human crew members, Bolt and Stone. Bolt was small, no taller than a human child, with scaled skin and eyes that moved independently of each other. He moved with incredible speed, almost blurring as he took his seat. Stone was the opposite, massive and gray, appearing to be made of living rock. He had to duck to enter the room and took up 2 seats at the table. Captain Gray stared in shock. Those species are not in council records. That's because the council hasn't met them yet, Jack said. The galaxy is bigger than your maps show. Tom refocused the conversation. We need your help to fight the Void Swarm. You've done it before. We need you to do it again. At what cost? Jack asked. Last time we fought a swarm, we lost 3 crew members, good people. The crew's faces darkened at this memory. We're prepared to offer payment, Captain Gray began. Jack cut her off with a sharp gesture. We don't need your money. What we need is freedom. If we help you, the council removes all criminal charges against us and our ship. We get to live without being hunted. The council will never agree to that, Gray said firmly. Your technologies violate fundamental safety protocols. They're unstable and dangerous. Then this meeting is over. Jack stood up. Good luck with your swarm. Wait, Tom said quickly. I have the authority to negotiate terms. Gray turned to him, shocked. You don't have the authority to override Council safety laws. Actually, I do, Tom replied. The Council gave me full negotiating power for this mission. They knew what it might require. He turned back to Jack. Show us why your ship works when it shouldn't. Convince us that you're not reckless, just ahead of Council science. Jack considered this for a moment, then nodded to Anna. Give them the tour, he said. Show them everything. For the next hour, Anna led them through the dangerous, explaining systems that defied conventional science. The ship's engines used controlled energy fluctuations that Council engineers would consider catastrophically unstable. Their weapons created micro-tears in space itself, hitting targets in ways that standard shields couldn't block. Kira's cybernetic eye recorded everything, her expression shifting from skepticism to reluctant admiration. By standard calculations, these systems should tear the ship apart, she admitted. But clearly they don't. Council science is too cautious, Anna explained as they examined the engine room. You build perfect systems that never fail but also never reach their full potential. We accept reasonable risk for exceptional results. Dr. Vell floated near a medical bay, unlike any in Council space. These healing technologies, they're remarkable but dangerous. Doc, who had joined them, nodded. They can heal injuries that would be fatal under Council care. The risk is worth it when the alternative is death. By the time they returned to the meeting room, the Council delegation had fallen silent, processing what they had seen. Jack waited for them, a holographic display of the void swarm floating above the table. I accessed your ship's data while you were touring, he said. Hope you don't mind. I wanted to see what we're up against. The display showed the massive energy storm tearing through a star system, consuming everything in its path. It's bigger than I thought, Jack admitted, and smarter. It's learning from each encounter with your fleet. Can you stop it? Tom asked directly. Jack studied the display, his expression grim. Maybe, but not alone. We'd need your fleet as support, following our lead without question. Captain Gray bristled. The Council fleet following the orders of criminals? Impossible. Then we all die, Jack said simply. Your pride or everyone's lives. Choose. Tom leaned forward. If you help us defeat the swarm, I will personally ensure all charges against you are dropped. Your crew will be free to come and go in Council space without fear of arrest. And our technology? Anna asked. Remains your own, Tom said. We won't try to confiscate or copy it. Jack and Anna exchanged looks, having a silent conversation. Then Jack nodded. We need to discuss this as a crew, he said. Privately, of course, Tom agreed. The Council delegation waited outside the meeting room while the crew of the Dangerous debated. Through the closed door, they occasionally heard raised voices. You can't seriously be considering this, Captain Gray hissed to Tom. These people are dangerous. Their technology violates every safety protocol we have. Their technology works, Tom replied. And right now, that's all that matters. 20 minutes later, the door opened. Jack stood there, his face unreadable. We've decided, he said. We'll help you fight the swarm. Relief washed over Tom's face. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Jack warned. I have conditions beyond what you've offered. Name them. First, my ship, my rules. We fight our way, not by Council tactical doctrine. Tom nodded. Agreed. Second, we get full pardons in writing before we engage the swarm. No tricks, no pending review nonsense. I'll make it happen. Third, Jack's eyes hardened. If we survive this, the Council acknowledges what we've done. Publicly. No more pretending we don't exist. Tom hesitated, then nodded again. Yes, the people should know who saved them. Jack extended his hand. Then we have a deal, Representative Tom. As they shook hands, Captain Gray looked away, her disapproval clear. Kira continued to record everything, with her cybernetic eye and Dr. Vell's skin pulsed with patterns that suggested both hope and concern. When do we leave? Jack asked. Now, Tom said. The swarm isn't waiting, and neither should we. Jack turned to his crew. Prepare for departure. We're going hunting. As the crew moved to their stations, Tom watched them with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. He had found the most feared ship in the galaxy and convinced its crew to fight. But one question remained. Was he bringing salvation to the Council, or something just as dangerous as the Void Swarm itself? The Dangerous and the Seeker traveled together through Council space, heading toward the Centauri system. Intelligence reports indicated the Void Swarm would strike there next. Inside the Dangerous, Jack studied the tactical display. The crew moved with practiced efficiency around him, preparing for the battle ahead. "How's the engine modification coming?" he asked Anna, who was covered in grease up to her elbows. "Almost done," she replied. "If my calculations are right, we can create an energy pulse 3 times stronger than before." "And if your calculations are wrong?" Marcus asked from his weapons station. Anna shrugged. "Then we explode. But we die in the swarm anyway, so what's the difference?" This dark humor was typical of the Dangerous crew. They lived with risk every day. Tom watched them from a corner of the bridge, fascinated by how differently they operated compared to Council ships. Here, there was no rigid chain of command. Everyone spoke freely, challenged ideas openly, and contributed regardless of their position. "Your crew works well together," Tom observed to Jack. "We have to," Jack replied. "Out in the scatter, rigid rules get you killed. We need everyone's best ideas, not just those from people with the highest rank." The ship's communication system crackled. "Dangerous, this is Admiral Reed of the Council Fleet. You are approaching a restricted military zone. Please identify yourselves." Jack nodded to Bolt, who handled communications. The small alien moved with blinding speed, opening a channel. "Admiral Reed, this is Captain Jack of the Dangerous. We're here on Council authority to assist with the Void Swarm threat." There was a long pause before Reed responded. "Captain, Jack, we have no record of a ship called Dangerous in our fleet registry." Tom stepped forward. "Admiral Reed, this is Representative Tom. The Dangerous is operating under my authority by direct order of the Council. I'm transmitting verification codes now." Another pause. Longer this time. "Verification received," Reed finally said, his voice tight with disapproval. "Representative Tom, please report to the command ship immediately for briefing. Captain Jack, your ship will remain at the outer perimeter until further notice." Jack laughed humorlessly. "That's not happening, Admiral. My ship goes where I decide, and right now I need to see your fleet formations and defensive plans." "That information is classified," Reed snapped. "Not anymore," Jack replied. "Not if you want our help." Tom intervened before the situation could escalate. "Admiral Reed, the Council has granted Captain Jack full tactical authority for this operation. I recommend scheduling a joint briefing immediately." 2 hours later, the command room of Reed's flagship was filled with tension. Council military officers in pristine uniforms stood on one side, the ragtag crew of the Dangerous on the other. Admiral Reed towered over a holographic display, showing the fleet's planned formation. "We have 217 ships arranged in a standard defensive shell," Reed explained. "Energy weapons charged and ready. If the swarm follows its previous patterns, it will approach from the direction of the Proxima system within the next 6 hours. Jack studied the display, then shook his head. "This won't work." Reed's face reddened. "This is standard Council doctrine for normal threats," Jack interrupted. "The Void Swarm isn't normal. Your neat formation gives it exactly what it wants, a connected energy grid to feed on." "What do you suggest instead?" Tom asked, before Reed could object further. Jack waved his hand over the display, scattering the neat formation into seemingly random positions. "Asymmetric defense," he explained. "No ship within energy transfer range of another. When the swarm attacks one section, it can't use that ship's power to jump to the next." Reed stared at the chaotic arrangement. "This violates every tactical principle we have. Ships need to support each other, concentrate firepower." "Conventional firepower doesn't work against the swarm," Jack reminded him. "You've already proven that." "Then what does work?" Reed demanded. Jack nodded to Anna, who stepped forward and placed a small device on the table. It projected a new image, Schematics for a weapon unlike anything the council officers had seen. We call it a void disruptor, Anna explained. It doesn't try to destroy the swarm with direct energy. Instead, it creates micro-tears in space that disrupt the swarm's ability to maintain cohesion. That technology is explicitly forbidden by council safety protocols, one of Reed's officers objected. Creating tears in space-time could lead to catastrophic collapse. On a large scale, yes, Anna agreed. But these are controlled temporary tears that self-seal in microseconds. We've used this technology 10 times, Jack added. The universe hasn't ended yet. Reed looked to Tom, who nodded. The Council has temporarily suspended those safety protocols for this mission, Admiral. And if we refuse to follow this strategy, Reed asked, then we leave, Jack said simply. And you can try your standard formation against the swarm. Let me know how that works out. Oh wait, you won't be able to because you'll be dead. The bluntness of his statement left the room silent. Finally, Reed sighed heavily. How quickly can we implement these changes? 4 hours later, the Council fleet had been completely reorganized, according to Jack's plan. The Dangerous took position at what seemed like a random point in space, far from the main fleet. Why are we out here alone? Captain Gray asked from her temporary station on the Dangerous's bridge. She and the other Council delegates had remained aboard for the battle. Because we're the bait, Jack replied calmly. The swarm will detect our unusual energy signature and come for us first. That's when we hit it with the void disruptor and create a weakness for the fleet to exploit. You're risking your ship deliberately? Gray sounded shocked. That's what we do, Marcus said from his weapons station. Take risks that matter. Before Gray could respond, the ship's sensors blared. A warning. Swarm detected, Bolt announced, his voice high and fast. Approaching from Vector 37. On the main view screen, they saw it. A massive storm of dark energy, swirling and pulsing as it moved through space. It was at least 3 times larger than in the records Tom had shown them. All hands, battle stations, Jack ordered calmly. Anna, power up the disruptor. Marcus, target the central mass when it gets within range. Bolt, keep our comm link to the fleet open. Everyone moved with practiced precision. Stone, the massive rock-like alien, braced himself against the engineering bulkhead, ready to physically hold systems together if necessary. Swarm has changed course, Bolt reported. It's coming straight for us. Jack smiled grimly. Good. It took the bait. The darkness approached rapidly, filling the view screen. Inside the swirling mass, they could see the crushed remains of ships it had consumed. Disruptor at full power, Anna called out. But Jack, the readings are off the scale. This swarm is too big for our standard approach. Jack's face hardened. Then we'll have to get creative. New plan. He quickly outlined a dangerous modification, using the ship's own power core to amplify the disruptor's effect. That could burn out our engines completely, Anna warned. Better than being consumed, Jack replied. Tom, tell Admiral Reed to prepare the fleet to fire everything they have at the coordinates I'm sending. The moment they see our signal, they hit that exact spot with everything. Tom relayed the instructions while the crew prepared for their desperate gambit. The void swarm surrounded them now, tendrils of dark energy brushing against their shields. The ship shuddered as systems began to fail. Shields at 60%. Marcus reported. Dropping fast. Wait for it, Jack said, eyes fixed on the sensor readings. We need the heart of the swarm in range of the disruptor. The ship shook violently. Lights flickered. Shields at 40%. Not yet. Alarms blared throughout the ship. A console exploded, showering sparks. Shields at 20%. Jack, we're running out of time. Jack watched the sensors intently. Now, Anna, full power to the disruptor. Marcus, fire. The Dangerous shuddered as its power core fed energy directly into the experimental weapon. A beam of impossibly bright light shot from the ship into the heart of the swarm. Where the beam hit, the darkness seemed to tear open, revealing the normal space behind it. The tear grew wider as the swarm recoiled from the wound in its being. Signal. The fleet, Jack shouted over the sound of failing systems. Tom sent the signal, and in the distance hundreds of council ships fired simultaneously at the coordinates Jack had provided. Their combined firepower struck the swarm at its newly vulnerable point. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the swarm began to contract, pulling away from the dangerous. Its movements became erratic, losing the coordinated flow that had made it so deadly. "It's working," Anna shouted. "The disruptor created a cascade effect. The swarm can't maintain cohesion." On the main view screen, they watched as the massive dark energy storm began to break apart, dissolving into smaller and smaller fragments until they dissipated entirely. Silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the sound of damaged systems, sputtering. Did we win?" Captain Gray asked in disbelief. Jack checked the sensors one last time. "Seems like it. Swarm readings are gone, just normal space debris now." A cheer erupted from the crew, quickly followed by a series of alarms. "Don't celebrate yet," Anna warned. "Our power core is critical. We've got maybe 10 minutes before it goes completely." "Can you fix it?" Jack asked. Anna was already moving toward engineering. "Maybe, if Stone and I can manually contain the reaction." As Anna and Stone rushed to save the ship, Admiral Reed's voice came over the comm system. "Dangerous, this is Admiral Reed. The swarm appears to be completely neutralized. What is your status?" Jack looked around at his damaged ship and exhausted crew. "We've been better, Admiral, but we're still here. How's your fleet?" "Minimal casualties," Reed replied, his tone softer than before. "Whatever you did, it worked. Thank you." Jack nodded, though Reed couldn't see it. "You're welcome. Now, if you don't mind, we have a ship to save." As emergency repair teams from the Council fleet approached to assist, Jack turned to Tom. "I believe the Council owes us those pardons now," he said with a tired smile. Tom extended his hand. "They're already being processed. The Council keeps its promises." As they shook hands, the bridge lights flickered back to full power. Anna's voice came over the intercom. "Power core stabilized. We're not going to explode today." Another cheer went up from the crew. The most feared ship in the galaxy had just saved everyone. 3 days after the battle with the Void Swarm, the Galactic Council chamber was more crowded than it had ever been. Representatives from all member species filled the main floor, while observers packed the upper galleries. The emergency lights had been replaced with the normal soft illumination, but the tension in the room remained. At the center of attention stood the crew of the Dangerous. They looked out of place among the formal council representatives in their practical, battle-worn clothing. Jack stood slightly ahead of his crew, his posture relaxed but alert. Anna, Marcus, Doc, Bolt, and Stone formed a protective semicircle behind him. The council leader rose from his seat, towering over everyone present. "This emergency session of the Galactic Council is now in session," he announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We are here to address the recent crisis and its unconventional resolution." His eyes fixed on the crew of the Dangerous. "Admiral Reed, please present your report." Admiral Reed stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. His uniform was pristine as always, but there was a new respect in his eyes when he glanced at Jack. 3 days ago, the entity known as the Void Swarm was completely destroyed in the Centauri system, Reed began. After conventional council tactics proved ineffective, the crew of the ship Dangerous implemented an alternative strategy that succeeded where our standard approaches failed. Reed activated a holographic display showing the battle from multiple angles, using technology that, he hesitated, that does not conform to council safety protocols. The Dangerous created a vulnerability in the swarm structure. This allowed our fleet to target and destroy it completely. "At what cost?" asked the Lumi ambassador, her skin pulsing with concerned patterns. "Minimal casualties to the council fleet," Reed answered. 16 ships damaged, 3 beyond repair, 7 personnel lost. "And what of the Dangerous itself?" asked the mech representative. "Severely damaged," Reed said. "Their power core nearly went critical. If not for the exceptional skill of their engineer and security officer, the ship would have been lost with all hands." Tom watched from his seat, noting how carefully Reed chose his words. The Admiral was no friend to the outcasts, but he was honest enough to acknowledge their contribution. The council leader turned to Jack. "Captain Jack, do you wish to address the council?" Jack stepped forward, looking entirely unimpressed by the grand chamber and important officials. "I'm not much for speeches," he said simply. "My crew did what we do, solve problems that others can't. The only difference is this time, the council actually asked for our help instead of hunting us." A murmur ran through the chamber at his bluntness. "And you used prohibited technology to achieve this result," the council leader stated. "We used effective technology," Jack corrected. "Whether you prohibit it or not doesn't change how well it works." The leader's expression hardened. "Technologies are prohibited for good reason, Captain. The void disruptor you employed creates tears in space-time. The potential for catastrophic failure was worth the risk when the alternative was certain death," Jack interrupted. "That's something your council never seems to understand. Perfect safety doesn't exist. Sometimes you have to take calculated risks to survive." The chamber erupted in voices, some outraged, some supportive. The council leader raised his hand for silence. "Nevertheless, you saved countless lives. The council acknowledges this debt." He nodded to Tom. "Representative Tom, I believe you made certain promises to secure this crew's assistance." Tom stood and approached the center of the chamber. "I did," he confirmed. "Full pardons for all crew members of the Dangerous, removal of their criminal designations, and public acknowledgement of their role in defeating the Void Swarm. The council has reviewed these terms," the leader said. "While there are concerns about setting a precedent, we recognize the exceptional circumstances." He pressed a control on his podium, and 6 official documents appeared on the central display. Full pardons for Captain Jack, Engineer Anna, Weapons Specialist Marcus, Medical Officer Doc, Communications Officer Bolt, and Security Officer Stone, the leader announced. "All prior charges related to use of prohibited technology are hereby expunged." Jack's expression remained neutral, but Tom noticed Anna's shoulders relax slightly. "Additionally," the leader continued, "the ship Dangerous will no longer be classified as a rogue vessel." "And our technology?" Jack asked directly. The leader hesitated. "That is more complicated." Elder Voss spoke up from his seat. "The technologies used by the Dangerous clearly have benefits we cannot ignore, but they also carry risks we cannot dismiss." "So what are you saying?" Jack asked. "We're free to go, but don't use our ship the way it was designed?" The chamber fell silent as everyone waited for the council's response. Finally, Admiral Reed stepped forward again. "If I may suggest a compromise." The leader nodded for him to continue. "The crew of the Dangerous have demonstrated exceptional skill and judgment," Reed said. "While their methods are unconventional, their results are undeniable. I propose a special designation for their ship and crew." "What kind of designation?" the leader asked. "An independent response unit," Reed explained. "Not fully part of the council fleet, but available when standard approaches prove insufficient. They would operate primarily in frontier regions where council presence is limited, dealing with threats before they reach core systems." Jack exchanged looks with his crew. Anna gave a small nod. "And our technology?" Jack asked again. "Would remain your own," Reed said, "with the understanding that certain systems would be used only when absolutely necessary, and with proper notification to nearby council ships." The council leader considered this. "You support this arrangement, Admiral, despite your well-known adherence to protocol?" Reed looked directly at Jack. "Recent events have adjusted my perspective on protocol, sir. Sometimes exceptional challenges require exceptional solutions." The leader turned back to Jack. "Is this arrangement acceptable to you, Captain?" Jack studied Reed for a long moment, then looked at Tom, who nodded encouragingly. "My crew and I will consider it," Jack said finally, "but we have a condition of our own." "Which is?" "No monitoring devices on our ship. No council observers reporting our every move. We work with you, not for you." The leader frowned. "How can we trust you without oversight?" Jack gestured to the battle display still floating above them. "I think we've earned some trust, don't you?" After further debate, the council voted. The result was closer than Tom had hoped. 7 in favor, 5 against. But it was enough. The compromise was approved. As the formal session concluded, Jack and his crew prepared to depart. They would return to their ship, now docked at a council, repair facility, and consider the offer. Tom caught up with Jack in a corridor outside the chamber. "You could stay, you know," Tom suggested. "The council needs people who think differently." Jack smiled slightly. "That's the problem. They need us but don't want us, at least not in their orderly systems." "Things could change," Tom said. "This is a start." "Maybe," Jack conceded. "But the frontier suits us better. Fewer rules, more space to breathe." As they reached the docking bay where a shuttle waited to take the crew back to their ship, Jack paused. "What about you, Representative? Going back to your comfortable council office?" Tom looked thoughtful. "I'm not sure. This experience has been educational." Jack laughed. "You could always visit. The Dangers could use a diplomat who knows when to break the rules." Before Tom could answer, Anna approached. "Jack, repair crews say the ship will be ready in 2 days," she reported. "They've been surprisingly helpful." "Nothing like saving everyone to improve service," Jack commented dryly. "So what's next for the most feared ship in the galaxy?" Tom asked. Jack looked out at the stars visible through the bay windows. "There's a lot of space out there, a lot of problems that need solving. I think we'll find our place." As the crew of the Dangerous boarded their shuttle, council officials watched with mixed emotions. Relief that the crisis had passed, gratitude for their unlikely saviors, but also concern about what precedent they had set. The council had spent generations building a carefully ordered society with clear rules and protocols. The Dangerous represented everything that stood against that ordered universe: risk, improvisation, and technologies that defied easy control. Yet they had saved everyone when the ordered approach had failed. 3 weeks later, the repaired and partially upgraded Dangerous departed council space. Their destination was unspecified, their mission undefined. But throughout the council worlds, people spoke in hushed tones about the humans and their alien companions who had saved civilization. Some called them heroes. Others still labeled them dangerous. In truth, they were both. Far beyond council space, other threats stirred, problems that conventional forces could never solve. When those threats eventually emerged, the council would face a choice: follow their safe protocols and risk everything, or once again turn to those they feared. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the ship named Dangerous flew on, ready for whatever came next. Tom watched the departure from his office window, a small smile on his face. On his desk lay an official request for reassignment to Liaison Officer for Frontier Regions. The council needed bridges between order and chaos, between safety and necessary risk. Perhaps, Tom thought, that was a role worth playing.